Welcome. This is episode 1 of Fishing is a Simulation.
Yes, it is.
So I'm Andrew.
Branson.
This is Branson. So what we're going to get into today is the fishing in Upper Tampa Bay. We both live on Upper Tampa Bay and Safety Harbor.
Yep.
That's where we do a majority of our fishing.
Yeah.
If you fish Upper Tampa Bay and you're not a captain, you probably understand that those are the hardest to fish redfish, specifically redfish,
For sure. Yeah.
that I have ever fished.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I grew up fishing in the intercoastal.
Yeah.
And then the bay was like a treat for me back then. So we're going to talk about the redfish, kind of the evolution of the bay as we've fished it. And then we're going to creep in to the rabbit hole of conspiracies, if you want to call it, conspiracies/theories about the, and I might butcher this, so forgive me if I do, Tocobaga tribe?
Tocobaga tribe.
The Tocobaga
Yeah.
tribe. Obviously from, so there's some craziness that have to do with the fish and the storms that have to do with the Tocobaga tribe. So we're going to get into that a little bit too, in the craziness. But we'll give each other kind of an introduction, tell you our kind of what we do with fishing, how we fish, why it's different about our lifestyles. We have different lifestyles.
Yeah, for sure.
You're about to join the club of children, so
Yes.
you're about to understand that
Yeah.
fishing is more of a privilege than we've ever thought necessary. You go first, and then
Yeah, for sure. So my fishing evolution, I would say, I've been here for a long time. My family's been here forever. I'm a Florida native, so I've been able to kind of do everything when it comes to starting out pond hopping, doing bass, going to piers, and evolving into, I guess you could say, of course, fishing less because family gets in the way, life gets in the way, job gets in the way, but really fine-tuning what I've done. And I would say that when I started out fishing, it was more just your basic inshore, us going on the kayak,
Right. Oh, the good days.
meat packing it on the kayak together and catching trout off of the Dunedin Causeway, things like that.
With the carrot stick?
With carrot sticks, it was more opportunistic. But having a lot more time, I would say, we would use pretty much anything. It didn't matter, shrimp, pinfish, paddle tails. It really didn't matter what we caught fish on. We just wanted to catch fish.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it came down to. And as we've gotten older, and I feel this way, it's been more of like okay, now I want to catch fish like this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You know what
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And when I moved to Safety Harbor, which was shortly after you did, I was still wanting to really just be like, I just want to catch fish. Like, I don't really care. Like, what I catch them on, I'll use live bait, I'll use artificials. It doesn't matter. And then it kind of progressed to, okay, so I've figured out these fish. It's very difficult. Now I want to start catching them on topwater. So, that's where the greatest lure known to man comes into play, the Ozark pencil.
Yeah.
And using that, still having a hard time catching those redfish because they're hard to catch. I mean,
But would you say, like, with the pencils, and again, this is what I've noticed, tell me if you agree, there's really only one color, which is bone. The fish that you do get, so it's kind of like musky fishing, like it's 1,000 casts.
For sure.
But the fish that you do get are all quality fish that are on top water,
for sure.
all like
yeah.
mid to upper slot fish.
Yeah.
You're not catching a lot of those small rats. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
On top water.
And I mean, really, if you think about it, the only time that I think I've caught a small redfish was when we were wading that one time a while back, and we were throwing paddle tails, and I caught like some smaller fish.
Yeah.
But
over by the creek there.
Yeah. But like for the most part, like all of them are quality fish, and like that progressing from like topwater to saying now like, hey, I'd love to inshore fish, and I love to do it, but now I kind of just want to do it on fly.
Right.
And I think that's where I'm at right now, is targeting these fish at very, I would say, particular times, because one, we're working, we have a family, or I'm almost in life where I have a family, and saying I have this window of 2 hours where I can get out. So I'm really going to be like, all right, this is the tide I want to do. This is when I want to go out, and I'm going to target these fish on fly. And I would say that I'm starting to catch more fish, which typically I would say is the opposite, because fly is harder. I think it is harder to catch fish in certain instances.
The only thing I would say, not as a disagreement, but to the opposite of that point, what I noticed in the bay versus, and I guess I'll just get into my introduction then. So I grew up fishing the intercoastal. So really, my two zones were like Honeymoon, Caladesi, and fishing either the beaches or the causeway or that surrounding area when I was a kid. And then once we got access to a boat, when my dad got a boat, then we were still hovering in that area of Dunedin, where I grew up, and then but fishing the spoil islands, fishing the no motor zones, but kind of it's the same water, it's just different little spots. But
standard old man fishing.
Basically it was gulp and it was cut bait, and it's
productive.
Very productive and a blast for kids. So when I I have 3 kids, so when I take my kids out, I'm cut bait fishing because if they're on the boat with me, it's about catching fish. Pretty much as quickly and as long as possible, because if we're going to be out for 3 hours, I know only like 30 minutes of it's going to be to fishing, and then the rest of the time is going to be entertaining, making sure they don't fall off, and all of the other things that go with it. There is no like sight fishing with 3 kids on a boat. There's nothing like that. At least not yet. So that's kind of what I grew up doing, and then as I progressed in, I guess you could say, once I got into like sight fishing and I kind of understood how a redfish works, redfish has like always been like the attraction for me for some reason. Like I've caught big snook and that's great. I love it. But like some guys, like their life is about catching a giant snook or about catching a giant tarpon or about like I've caught decent sized tarpon. I've caught really small tarpon on fly in like ponds and like hopping all over Ozona and Palm Harbor and those areas that everybody knows, like in high school, like those are the spots to go catch a little tarpon at. So I've done all that. It's a blast. Like I love all kinds of fishing.
It's fun.
But once I got into sight fishing, and then really like the guy that introduced me to fly fishing, my younger brother Adam, started out like, you remember Kevin Brandt, the dude down there on I think he's in Palm Harbor down there in downtown somewhere. He had like the knockoff Guy Harvey, but the artwork was better type of a guy. So Adam got like a fly setup from this dude when he was in like middle school.
I remember that.
So like secretly Adam was kind of like the trendsetter because fly fishing was not cool. Like fly fishing is cool now. Like that's the community. It's very like Skinny Water made a big impact into that, and like a bunch of these other companies have kind of followed suit. So like fly fishing is like the cool thing to do now. So Adam kind of got into that and then started tying flies and fishing. I think he had like a Ross, like an old Ross reel, like a gold. I don't know what it was, but and like a cheap rod, but like it wasn't an expensive setup. So then fast forward to like high school, Alex, my older brother, gets into it, and then he becomes like kind of the nerd with it. And then when he moved to South Florida, the fishing totally changed because now it's like nothing by boat. It's not really sight fishing. It's fishing canals and lakes for saltwater fish, which saltwater and freshwater. So you got a peacock bass and a snook or a tarpon sitting right next to each other. So once Alex started fly fishing, for whatever reason, then I got into it. So I went down and I saw, and I don't know who he is, but this was 15 years ago probably. Guy with long hair at Bill Jackson's. He was on Geofish, I think. Cody or something.
No, Brian Gill was on Geofish. But
so,
Cody was the other guy that was always there.
Okay, so I couldn't remember if he was, but like Geofish was like, man, whatever these guys are doing, like this is the coolest thing ever. Oh, and they're doing it like on fly.
It was like the coolest video ever.
So I bought like a Lamson Lightspeed and like a TFO Mangrove, not the Mangrove Coast, like the original Mangrove, and it was like sweet. And then that like progressed into my introduction into Tampa Bay, the upper part of the bay. So I had a buddy that lived on upper Tampa Bay by the airport, and you could see this flat washes out from Allen's Creek. So I would wade behind his house, and like the first time I went with fly, like I had bought like the ugliest giant like crabs, like just whatever I picked out. Like I knew nothing about flies. I just picked stuff out at Bill Jackson's and went out. And like short sleeve shirt, like stripping sleeves and like whatever line and leader, like it was all mismatched and it was probably ridiculous. But like I caught 4 redfish the first time I ever went fly fishing at that spot. So I had dabbled around and like I knew how to cast and everything, but like I remember I used Royal Wolf triangle taper, like saltwater line.
Sick.
And I thought it was the best thing ever because it was like this crystal blue color. It was sweet. But I caught 4 redfish that day blind casting. Okay. And like one time, like I had some kind of a tangle in my reel, and my line was out as I'm getting it out. And when I reeled it in, like I had a redfish, and nothing was big, but like that was my aha moment of Tampa Bay is what fishing is supposed to be. This was in my head of the fish do what they're designed to do. Like I grew up fishing the bridges at the causeway, like a lot. So guys would catch like the most random stuff out there, and like every once in a while some guy would catch a redfish on like a squid rig and like a triangle weight, and I was like, this is just like this isn't how I picture redfish to be. Like they're not supposed to be hanging out in bridges. And again, this is my teenage mind. So then I get into the bay and I'm like, wow. So like the guys that I'm watching on TV growing up, CA and Ray Van Horn and the shallow water shows every once in a while. Mark Sosin was kind of the offshore guy, but like Rick Murphy and all those guys that were Blair Wiggins.
The Mogan man.
So as soon as the Mogan man would come out,
ripping darts.
Made me lose my train of thought thinking about Blair Wiggins, but that was like, now I get to fish like these guys do because they go out and they're like, I'm going to target redfish today. Like I never targeted anything, but it mixed through, and then so take fly fishing and then put it in Tampa Bay and change my scenery. The bay came like the holy grail of fishing to me. It's like, it's this mystical place that's ready to be explored. And then at that point, me and my older brother got a John boat, and you've been on that John, you were on that John boat many times. We took it out still mostly in the intercoastal, but like a couple times a year, we were like, I remember we were like afraid to go in the bay because everybody said the water's like tough to navigate out there. Like there's like out here you can pretty much see whatever you're gonna hit. Like unless you go north, like north of Anclote and stuff, like into Pasco, there's a lot of rocks and stuff. But for the intercoastal, for the most part, there's like nothing really that hidden like that you're gonna hit. You can pretty much run anywhere in just about any boat. So the bay was always like this mystical place, and we finally like would go out and fish, and we'd have like some banger days. And then we'd have days where we didn't catch anything, but we would see like 100 fish plus like on the shoreline in this like aluminum boat. Like that was the bay I thought I was moving to when I moved. And I would definitely say, so I moved to Safety Harbor in 2019 and started fishing that flat there by the house. The Philippi, I mean the Philippi Flat, if you want to call it that, but it's basically between Philippi Park and the spa. And it's super high pressured. Super high pressured. So I would say, kind of to transition now into your thoughts on, okay, so we fish that flat the most of any other spot in the bay, I would say, because
I mean we're there just about every week. I mean we're there a lot, and I think it's interesting, and this kind of transitions into that where you're saying about the redfish and just the fish in general, you know, in the intercoastal, but mainly the redfish. It's almost as if the redfish in the bay are a whole other species. To me, they act like a bonefish. They're always moving. They're never stopping. And I think it has a lot to do with what it's like there. Is there's not a lot of grass. There's not a lot of things for them to tail on. We see some fish tailing every once in a while, you know, I would say. But I think that it has a lot to do with the fact of their location and what they do. And I think that's what makes them harder to fish and catch.
So rewind real quick to your comment about tailing. So like in high school, when I would go red fishing with my dad and brothers, and you did this plenty of times too with the neighbor that lived across the street from my parents, we would go out to Caladisi and basically fish. I like to think of it, it was pretty much the same school for like 10 years of fish. And it was, sometimes it was 50 fish, sometimes it was 300 fish. And they were all like giants. And they all tailed in a school.
In a giant school.
I have not seen that one time since I fished the bay.
I've heard from other people that they do it, but I've never seen it. Now, I've seen a few redfish, you know, tail. I've seen a lot of fish slide in mud. Where they're literally on their
like belly crawl,
belly crawling, and those fish are sick. And you think when you see those fish, you're like, well, this is done. Like, I'm catching this fish. And then you pick up your line, and they spook. And it's like, what did I just do? Like, I didn't do anything. Or you think, this is the perfect fly. I have the perfect pattern. This is exactly what I need to throw. And they just completely like disappear. Like they just go. I just don't understand it. Like why are these fish so hard compared to what we were used to?
And I mean, it was like I hate to use the term like redfish are kind of dumb. The redfish I grew up catching were kind of dumb. Because you could catch them at any given time. And when they're schooled up, maybe it's like a different thought. And again, I'm not like a biologist or anything that I can tell you the facts behind this. But it seems to me that when redfish are schooled up, they are far, far, far less spooky and far easier to catch. Will the school spook? Yeah, it'll spook, but like...
If you make a whole bunch of noise.
But again, and you remember this... Fishing that big school of fish behind Caladisi, everyone would throw in, and you would double or triple up pretty much every time. Then the school would disappear. You'd land those fish, and then you'd sit there for 15 minutes, and then all you had to do was wait, and then the school would pop up.
Yeah.
They'd pop back up 50 yards or 100
Yeah.
yards away, and then you'd go find them again, and you could do that all night long. And we had 10, 15 fish nights in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, because again, you just fish until you couldn't see anymore.
It's just weird because like in those situations, the example of what those fish are doing or what those fish are acting like, you should be catching them.
Right.
And then over here in the intercoastal, you do.
They do.
You see it, and they react the correct way. In the bay, they don't.
Yeah.
When you see a fish tailing or you see a fish along a mangrove line, and you're like, well, this fish is definitely
100%.
And he doesn't. You're like, well, why did that happen?
Yeah.
You know, why did this fish act differently? And it is almost as if they're a different species to me.
They are, like, without a doubt, the spookiest of any fish that I've ever seen. They're the spookiest.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about redfish, but the snook aren't like that. The snook pretty much react the way that you want to react.
The small snook do, I think. Now, granted, you've had a lot better success with the
bigger ones.
With the bigger snook than I have, but like, whereas, see, you've got the paddleboard. So like, if I'm waiting and we meet each other out there, like, you're usually on the board.
Yeah.
So you can get a little bit further than A, I'm willing to walk, and B, I have the time to do, frankly.
Yeah.
But you can commit a little bit more time at this point in your life to doing that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm going to do that, usually I'll do it from the boat. And I've just pretty recently learned that trolling motors are probably the best worst thing for fishing.
Yes.
At least in the water that we do it in, because again, our happy place is 6 inches to a foot of water where we can see everything.
Yeah. And nobody wants to pole. I mean, let's be honest.
If you use yes, but it's fun to be pulled.
Yes.
But to actually get back there, it's not not fun.
No.
But if you, this is a very blanketed statement, but I believe it to be true. If you use a trolling motor in Upper Tampa Bay, and you're not bait fishing, if you're fly fishing, or if you're, and again, fly fishermen are going to laugh at me because you don't use a trolling motor anyway. You guys are freaks. You will not catch a fish up there. It's impossible.
I agree.
Now, again, you can pull up to a little creek washing out and chum it with bait, and the bait guys can do just fine. Like, that's fine. That's shooting fish in a barrel. But like, if you're talking about what we are, I don't know if passion is a strong term, but like passionate about the way that we fish up there, you're not going to be able to use a trolling motor and catch them.
For sure. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And I think that it has a lot to do with, maybe it has something to do with like the murkiness of the water. The water's super murky up there normally. There's a few spots, a few spots where the water gets clear, you know. But for the most part, that water is murkier, and maybe those fish have changed and they have a more pronounced lateral line so they can feel things, So, I mean, I don't know, but I think that I just recently, I would say, started to catch the redfish on fly.
Yeah, it took,
and it's not, it's only one or two, maybe. It's not a whole bunch.
So it's funny you say that you just recently did. I was in the same boat. So when I first moved, no pun intended, when I first moved there, I probably fished for a solid year before I caught the first redfish. I caught plenty of snook. I got like a 35 out there on a top water in a rainstorm that was freaking awesome.
That was a tank.
That was a big fish, and it was on top water, a big girl. So I had caught plenty of snook. I feel like I had figured them out fishing in like in Mullet Creek. So again, I could catch them on top water at any given time. Or if I wasn't catching them on top water, I knew I could pretty much tie like an NLB in or some kind of paddle tail, like a boner or glow on, and probably catch 2 or 3, 20-inch fish. Nothing big, but there was plenty of big fish in there. The snook were the easy part because they act like pretty much every other
like
snook, right?
Yeah, a snook is a snook for the most part,
But once you get, and again, I would say I fished anklet last week, and I would say the snook that we saw out there were just as spooky as the redfish that we saw out there, and we didn't catch anything that day. The only follow that we even got was a big snook, and that was on fly. You said something earlier, though, about the fly fishing being harder. I think one of the conclusions, or really the big conclusion I've come to, is as nice as it is for me to go out and power fish, because I wade most of the time, it's nice to go out and chuck a pencil because I can throw it 3 miles. I can cover a ton of water. But I think the subtle presentation of a fly gets eaten twice as much as any other soft plastic artificial that a spinning guy or a bait caster guy is going to throw.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my opinion because you've shown that the success on that. You had that day where you caught those 2 big overslot reds on fly. It's like if I would have been on a paddleboard next to you pitching a soft plastic, like Would I have caught those fish? Probably not. But you were throwing a small fly, something that's very unassuming, that probably just caught their eye on the bottom, but didn't spook them because they didn't really know it was there until the last minute, and then out of reaction they bit it.
Yes.
They weren't searching for that. Whereas if they hear something coming from a while away or a good ways away, so like a soft plastic making a tail beat or a topwater, like they hear it far before they see it, so they're already on guard. Does that make sense? So I think the presentation of really any fly, specifically a crustacean fly, like you've been catching them on, it's so less intimidating that you can trick a big fish a lot easier on fly, my opinion, in the bay than you can on spinning gear.
For sure. And I think going back to the pattern is very important because I've been paying attention to and listening to captains that we know that are using certain things or seeing what they're eating.
Yeah, the guys are truly out there every day.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they give you a hint or you see like a certain crab that's on the ground, look at that and be like, there might be a good chance that redfish is going to be eating that. And that's helped me a lot too, is like kind of getting smart with it and saying, well, I know I was catching them on this in the intercoastal, but let's not do that anymore. Let's completely change it up.
It's completely different.
And try something different, using something maybe even smaller than what you're used to using, or maybe a little bit bigger than what you're used to using, depending on what the bait is like. I think that helped me a lot for sure. And being quiet too. So.
One thing that like completely blows me away about the bay compared to the intercoastal, and this is like the like magical part about the bay for me, is like I can fish Safety Harbor, Oldsmar, and say like stop at like Mobley, right? And that's like one fishery. Yeah. I can go over to Rocky Point, and that's a completely different fishery.
For sure. Yeah. Weedon Island.
Then you go down to Weedon Island, and now you introduce pinfish in.
Yeah.
So that's like, for those of you that may not know, like there's no pinfish in Upper Tampa Bay. And
supposedly.
if you've supposedly,
yeah.
But I can tell you from experience, I've never seen one. I've never caught one. I've sat out there and tried to chum for bait many times without pinfish showing up.
Yeah.
You go down to this like the southern part of Weedon Island, like Feather Sound area, pinfish everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like fishing out here again to me in the intercoastal. That's what it reminds me of. There's like, that's really the furthest south I've gone on a boat in the bay. And I would say the upper part of Tampa Bay is really down to that southern end of Weedon Island. Like I fished the Big Island Gap and the airport and things like that. But like there's like, it's like all of a sudden you get on the other side of the Howard Franklin and pinfish pop up, the fishery changes again. So like Upper Tampa Bay is really like several different fisheries that like, it's like states. Like you've got Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and like Alabama.
Yeah, it's totally different.
And stuff. It's completely different. And I love that part of it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like that bridge is like almost like a barrier for like a lot of different things.
It's crazy.
I mean, even like when we've had like the hurricanes or like supposed hurricanes come up there, like things get saved because of that bridge, and the waters maybe go up as high or something like that. Yeah. So it's it's interesting that upper Tampa Bay is a totally different ballgame.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So in your experience, or really, do you have experience fishing like down towards the Skyway, that part of Tampa Bay? Because again, completely different fishery.
Yeah. I mean, I fished the Skyway. I've never been really in the inside. I've been like a few times, and it was only like literally like bait fishing pretty much.
Yeah.
Once when I fished the actual Skyway and I caught like one of the biggest hook of my life underneath the bridge, it was
like the main bridge or like the fishing bridge?
A giant, like on the dolphin circle jerk things. I don't know what they're called. But...
The dolphin what?
Nothing, yeah.
Anyway,
So, those things, I caught it on that. We were catching like snapper and
I still don't even know what you're talking about.
No,
the dolphin, what?
Yeah, there's like the round things underneath the Skyway. Like they're like the dolphin circle things. I don't know what they're supposed to be something with dolphins.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Dolphins. Man.
Yeah.
We could deal
dolphins.
with we could deal with less dolphins around here.
I fished
FWC,
there.
if you're listening, maybe we should open up like a limited dolphin season with bows.
That'd be fun, like harpooning them.
But anyway, I don't condone any of this behavior. I'm just saying a few less dolphins wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
It's true. And then I've fished on the kind of far in the inside, and it was like bait fishing and snook fishing and stuff like that, but not much. Yeah. So
same. I've bait fished there. With a captain like years ago. I've done like a couple of trips out there. My biggest snook that I will never truly know if it was the biggest thing biggest snook ever. Like everyone in my family, men-wise, meaning my brothers and my dad, we all have a fish over 40, including me, or right at 40.
Yeah.
And I've seen a 42.
Yeah.
My older brother has a 42.
Yeah.
So I know what a big snook is. I hooked a snook when I was like 15 down there, middle of winter, super cold, bait fishing. It was windy. We were fishing like this half-sunk like spoil island, basically. And bait fishing, guy was chumming, and my Cajun Thunder goes down, and like I just like lay in. Yeah, Cajun Thunder. There you go. Yeah. So I was 15. I didn't know what I was doing, and this was when the CI4 just came out. So this guy had a couple of CI4s, and I was using one.
That's a high roller.
But it was missing a handle, so it had just basically like this flat stick that he had like jerry rigged on.
That's
there.
good.
So anyway, hooked this giant snook. You can hate me in the comments if you want. Like I said, at that point, I knew what a 42-inch snook looked like. This was every bit of 45 plus.
Yeah.
We got it up to the side of the boat.
Yeah.
The guy had commented about how big of a snook this is, and that this is probably the biggest snook he's ever seen.
Yeah.
My dad said the same thing.
Yeah.
And when he goes down to net it, because again, that's a fish that if you grab it by the jaw and lift it up, you're going to kill it.
Yeah.
You are going to kill it.
Yeah.
So he goes down with the net, hook straightens, the fish comes off at the boat. We all got a good look at it. But
Yeah. Well, I think we've all had a fish like that before, especially, and I feel like it's always a snook, you know?
I guess my whole point, my point is like the bay is a magical place
For sure. Yeah.
for fishing.
Yes.
Do you think, to my next point, not to go down the rabbit hole yet, that's next, I think. Do you think in the time, like, did you fish it much growing up, or has it just been more since you've lived down there?
No, literally, I would say all of my Tampa Bay fishing has been since I moved to Safety Harbor.
Okay.
I've done a few things, and I've done some adventuring and things like that.
Adventuring?
Yes, adventuring. Yeah, when we were young, dumb, and just had more time on our hands than we
Doing
did
stuff
to do
with
it.
dolphins under the skyway,
exactly,
apparently.
Yeah. But no, so well, I guess you could say that our Tampa Bay fishing, we've done majority of it is at the outflow, is at the tarpon outflow, because that is the bay.
Yeah, if you want to consider
is.
it that.
That's the most northern part of the bay.
But that's a whole nother animal, because now you're dealing with. Remember that night we were night fishing and you caught like a 6-pound bass?
Yeah.
This is on the saltwater side, by the way.
On a first light.
Yes, a first light jig.
Giant.
You caught like a 30-inch snook, so respectable fish, like a 6-pound bass.
Yeah.
Really big bass.
Yeah.
And then you snagged a mullet,
No,
like a giant mullet.
I caught a mullet. It ate it. Remember it?
It did.
It ate
I couldn't
that
remember,
jig.
but it was like 3 consecutive
gripping,
casts.
yeah.
You caught it in like 3 consecutive casts on the saltwater side.
Yeah.
That's a completely different fishery.
is.
You have to lump that.
It
so
is.
again, that was one thing I
sure.
missed earlier. Is like you also have this freak of nature with like giant alligators. Biggest alligator I've ever seen has been there on the saltwater side. You too.
Yep.
Bull sharks like crazy.
Yep.
200-pound tarpon rolling year round up there by the dam. So like that's like the Amazon jungle.
For sure. Yeah. But I mean, no, most of my excuse me, I'm getting excited.
Yeah.
Most of my Tampa Bay fishing has been since 2020 I moved. So I mean, it's only been 3 years that I've got to really get to know that area.
Right.
So,
I guess. But like, do you think you had enough experience with it before to make a judgment based on, do you think it's better now, or do you think it was better when you were younger, let's say like high school / college age? I will say college age because neither of us are college people.
Personally, I have a hot take on whether fishing has been better or worse. I think it's always been good. I think people just like to complain about things.
I agree with that.
And there's more people, to complain about it. So I think personally, I think the bay has always been good. I don't think it might have been maybe a little bit better because there was less people, but I think there's still a heck of a lot of fish. And I don't think that a lot of the things that have happened the past couple of years have affected the upper bay.
Well, okay, so the only thing I would push back on a little bit is like, I think the things that you're talking about, they'll remain nameless, but let's say let's just call them Rhiney Roint.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
it may rhyme with that. And then there was another one that I would maybe throw into that loop, which was the Feather Sound Golf Course. They completely redid.
Yeah.
And they redid all of the grass out there, which means they put down all new fertilizer, and that fertilizer only has one place to really go, so it washes out into the bay.
Yeah.
So does that cause the algae blooms that cause the 3 million plus snook kills and redfish kills that tell everybody therefore they should stop keeping fish, and if they keep a fish they're a bad person and they're going to die and have to pay for that type of a thing? Like, no, captains. I don't think that keeping a fish here and there, and again, not to get political with it, I do think FWC does a good job with seasons, keeping it closed, because remember 2 years ago it was 2 fish per person, meaning redfish, that you could harvest, or 6 per boat.
Yeah.
Now it's 2 per boat.
Yeah.
Or 1 per person.
Yeah.
Right? Am I 100% right on that?
I think so.
I think it's a minimum. It doesn't matter if there's 10 people on the boat.
Yeah.
You can only keep 2 fish for the entire boat, or it's 1 per person.
I would say we're on a different side. I would be fine if they completely closed everything forever, you know. And I know you like to keep fish. Not saying I don't like to keep fish.
But here's the thing, like every once in a while. I have not kept a fish in probably 2 years. I've never kept a fish out of the bay.
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
Now, not because I'm against it, but because I just haven't caught a redfish in the bay that was slot, and I was in a place, like I'm not going to keep one when I wade. Like if I'm out on the boat and I have a cooler with ice in it, like then maybe that's a question, because my family likes redfish and I like redfish. I will keep them if I fish out in the intercoastal. But I certainly don't keep, like, redfish for me is like a once a year thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never kept a snook. That I have a hard time doing. And some guys are the complete opposite. They'll keep a snook and not keep a redfish.
Yeah.
So
kind of interesting.
Yeah, I just see that as an interesting thing. But like, I've just never been able to bring myself to eat a snook. I don't view redfish that same way. Though I think I have more respect for redfish than I do snook fishing wise, meaning for the sport of it.
Yeah.
But I think that back to like the disasters, if you want to call them disasters that happened in the bay, like I do think a lot of that stuff did affect the water quality. And I'll give you an example. When I first moved to Safety Harbor, the Philippi Flat was covered in grass.
Yeah.
Turtle grass.
Yeah.
There's no turtle grass out there anymore.
That's true.
That's only been 4 years.
Yeah.
So there's no more turtle grass out there. There is grass. Most of it's disconnected. Most of it's like, I don't think it's sargassum, but it's that floating grass that kind of just moves in and out with tides and wind and stuff like that. But the grass is starting to come back. But I've noticed the amount of algal blooms, whatever you want to call it, and the actual, just really looking at it in layman's terms, like, again, I'm not a scientist, just looking at the grass, it's like looking at your yard. If you're in the summer, if you don't have sprinklers and there's no rain, your grass is going to die. Why? Because it's not getting the nutrients that it needs, or something's killing the nutrients, aka the sun and no water. I think it's similar, the negative effects of, the whatever you want to call it, the disasters that happened up there. I do think that has something to play with it. However, on your note, where it's now been turned into a political, they're out to get us mentality, I don't know if I play necessarily into that. But I do get the side of the guys that say that make their living out there. I do understand that. Yeah. But to chastise somebody for keeping a fish out there because that's your livelihood is like saying,
yeah, I mean,
you can't drive your car if I'm going to be on the road because of risk of killing me.
Yes, yeah. It's stupid. Yeah.
It's just a little too over the top. But if we go down that path, everybody's going to hate us and never come in here again. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But okay, so like let's do you have anything else in that, or can we pivot to something crazy?
I think we're ready to get weird.
Okay.
If you could.
So we're gonna get weird. Let me preface this by saying I don't think I truly have an opinion on this stuff, but I do think it's very.
We have a lot of thoughts,
but it's very entertaining,
yes,
and I like to think that this stuff is hilarious to talk about.
For sure, yeah.
To me, and it's purely entertaining.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a dude in Safety Harbor. We know who we're talking about, but he will remain nameless. Who told me?
Yeah.
The
Tocobaga tribe.
Tocobaga tribe.
Yes, yeah.
Cast this blessing / curse / whatever you want to call it, protection thing on the bay, specifically the upper part of the bay, protecting the redfish.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And protecting the peninsula from the storms. That I've heard. So like
Yeah.
the crazy like middle-aged single women
Yeah.
that are like into the weird mysticism and stuff are like, oh, that's why we never get hit by a hurricane. It's like, okay, we got smoked in 1992 by Hurricane Andrew. And supposedly. Yeah, I wasn't alive then technically, so I don't know if we actually got smoked or not by Hurricane Andrew. But I know this in my lifetime. I mean, I've been through dozens of storms or per se, and I've had many hurricanes that aren't as bad as some of the thunderstorms that we've had.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, we never really get direct hit. And remember, 2 years ago, we were supposed to get smoked.
Yes.
So if you remember, Hurricane Ian last hurricane season was supposed to hit us. Every single plot was like, it was literally going to come in through Egmont, and Fort DeSoto, down there. It was going to come in and literally rip the
Safety
entire
Harbor was going to be gone. Like,
everything.
Really
like Tampa was going to be gone. St. Pete was going to be gone. Like everything was going to be gone because those things are freaking huge. Like that storm stretched from the Keys to the Panhandle. Like it was several hundred miles wide, the entire storm. Just the eye alone is 200 miles wide or whatever.
It was crazy.
So like we were supposed to literally disappear.
Yeah.
What happened the night before? It was going to crush us. It turned south and it crushed Cape Coral and it turned.
Yes.
So you look like you have.
I do. Yes. Okay. So who is the Tocobaga tribe? Okay. Let's get into this real quick. Yeah. So it was a Indian tribe that was in Safety Harbor. From 900 to 1500 until the Spaniards gave them the smallpox blankets.
So basically, like
supposedly,
So basically, they
got rid of them.
They went extinct.
Yes.
In like 1700, almost like on the number, at least from what I read about.
Yeah. But that was like the main time when they were like super there. But majority of them were in Safety Harbor. And what did they do in Safety Harbor? They built mounds.
Well, okay, but that's not so. Yes, you're right.
Yes,
their capital city was Philippi Park. What is now Philippi Park?
Yes.
That was considered their capital. So their Tallahassee per se, or their Tampa was that. However, they were all over Pinellas County.
They were,
They were into Polk County in the later area. So they like interbred with Creek Indians, the Creek or the Cree. I'm not sure exactly. And again, I'm butchering it. Let me know. I don't really care. It is what it is, but you get the gist of it. So they were like intermarrying and having children with a different tribe as they were starting to shrink after the Spanish and the Europeans basically came over. So again, this is like in the single-digit years or the three-digit years into... Like, basically, they lived for, what, about 900 years is what I read, or something like that. So they found mounds, these shell mounds, and what I read about the shell mounds is I've heard that they're, like, sacred places, but I've also heard that they're just trash dumps for these people. So basically that they would build their houses in, like, a circle.
Yes,
and they would would eat mostly, their diet mainly consisted of, they were hunter-gatherers, seafood, deer,
and...
fish and manatees. Yes, they ate manatees. So what I read is that they found these shell mounds in Tierra Verde, all the way down in what's the most southern part of St. Pete down there? Just is that St. Pete Beach or like?
Yeah, it's like there's that Shell Island.
Yeah, Shell Island. So basically, right. Egmont would really be it. Egmont and like Fort DeSoto. They found these shell mounds there. They found these shell mounds on Weeden Island.
Yep.
In 1898, this is interesting. I read this morning. Weeden Island was given as a wedding present to some guy that basically built a house there, but he was going back and forth from the mainland because there was no way to get to it.
Yeah.
So at least then, now they got. I think there's a bridge you can get into it. It's like a state park. I've only been to it by boat, so I haven't been to it. I think you can drive there and get there by car. But the interesting thing to me is, when we put the paddle boards in the water, I don't want to paddle like I would love to fish that bank over by that power plant in Oldsmar there.
Yeah.
I don't want to paddle there. That's really far.
Yeah.
These people made canoes, these Tocobaga
tribe.
I can never say it. Yeah, Tocobaga.
Yeah.
So they made these dugout canoes, like they burned them, they burned the holes into them.
Yep.
They paddled from God knows where, Safety Harbor, St. Pete, and they found and basically like lived on Weeden Island because these shell mounds supposedly, again, it depends on which historian wrote the article. It was either their trash dump from the houses because they would eat oysters and snails and crabs and whatever else, and they would just toss all the shells in the middle, and they're trash, and the only thing that's left is the shells. or it was some sacred thing. But basically anywhere they find these, so they weren't just in Safety Harbor. This was like their capital, and then it's like everything else from there. See, it was just the Pinellas Peninsula, but not even back then. It wasn't. It wasn't the Pinellas Peninsula until the guy named Pinella or whatever, like came here and like
Lou Pinella
settled it. But that hasn't even been that long ago. That was only like late 1800s. That wasn't even. So basically, it was only Native Americans here in Pinellas until almost 1900.
Yeah. But what if? Hear me out for a little bit.
Yeah.
So we know that the Tocobaga tribe created these mounds to keep us safe from hurricanes.
Supposedly.
Or at least that's what they're saying.
Supposedly.
What if they put a spell on the upper Tampa Bay to make it hard to catch fish so the Spaniards would die? And that's the reason why. That's the reason why it is hard to catch fish up there, because there's a curse on the fish to make it difficult. And that's why the pinfish aren't there. And they're only south.
That I didn't think about it. But okay, but my only thing with that is like there's pinfish at Wheaton Island. There's a shell mound there. No, there is. I've caught them there. I've caught them there.
Okay.
What about the corn thing?
So this is getting even deeper into it, okay? So we know that they put a curse on the redfish, so that's why you can't catch redfish, or at least it's
supposedly.
hard.
At least that's what that one guy told me that one time.
Yeah. So, but the Tocobaga tribe somehow got corn. Corn was not a thing in Pinellas County at that time.
It wasn't Pinellas County.
No.
It was just...
No, there's no corn.
It was just the peninsula. Yeah. But, okay, but
Where
like
did
here's
they get
my...
the corn from?
Okay, so here's my several theories on that. Okay, I'm going to start out way up in the clouds here. The aliens gave it to him.
Yeah, the aliens, yeah, for sure. The aliens
we can
gave
axe
them
that.
the corn.
We can axe that one out.
Okay.
Like I said, I think they were intermingling. So the article I read about the corn thing was that they had got it from a different northern tribe. What does northern mean? Okay, there's a bunch of Indian tribes in Florida.
Yeah.
There still kind of is. I guess the Seminole is still the biggest. They have like 3,000 members. They're all of I-4. What was the ones down south in the Everglades? Miccosukee?
The Osceolas, maybe?
No, not the Osceolas. The Miccosukee, I think.
Okay. There's like Mayaca and all that stuff.
And then there was like the creek over in the middle of the state. And that's what makes sense to me, because like if you go to Polk County now, there's still some farmland out there. Now it's mostly cattle.
Yeah.
But pretty much most of Florida, except for like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, the cities, Orlando, everything else is cattle country. It's all woods and cattle ranches. So there's plenty of farming around. Safety Harbor sitting as high as it does on, like, it's a sandhill. Safety Harbor is just a giant sandhill. So like I live a block from the water, technically, off of North Bayshore. So I literally I can walk out my front door and see the water 200 yards from me. But I'm still 20 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
So you got to
fly
fly on your shirt. That thing's been flying around here all day.
It's a unit.
Yeah, that thing. Is, I think he was chowing down on some trash, and he's too full to like fly around, so he's super lazy.
Yeah.
But he's been dodging bullets all morning.
Yeah.
So I think like in the hurricanes that have hit us if you want to call it that, not direct hits, but the stuff the last few that have been bad.
We got kissed. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely got kissed. We got smooched. Yeah, we got smooched for sure.
Yeah.
So Irma, and there was one before that. The bay was completely dry.
Yeah. I remember seeing pictures. Yeah.
Freaking crazy to see Tampa Bay. So basically, the storm sucked all of the water out of Tampa Bay, and the entire thing was completely dry. This last one, what was it called again? Ian.
Yeah.
Ian filled the bay up with water. So I got water that came like up over Bayshore. St. Pete got smoked. Bayshore was covered in water. Oldsmar was covered in water. But like we were fine in Safety Harbor. It sits so high above sea level. I think we have been hit directly by storms. And it's just not
There's, as far as I'm aware, there's the only...
Like, I feel like right now the relationship is you're bringing up the conspiracies, I'm debunking them. That's not it. I think,
we know that they put a curse on the redfish, and that's why it's hard to catch.
That's why they're hard to catch.
Yeah. But they are keeping us safe from the hurricanes with the mounds as well. So that's,
They think, though, like, there's a lot of historians that think that there's been so many mounds that have been mowed over, not like mowed like with a mower, but I mean like pushed out of the way and like built on top of and like developed on, and that they're just whether by
Yeah.
ignorance, or they don't really care. They just want to build houses there. Like that, there was probably a lot more. So,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like
the storm thing is like interesting. The thing about the fish is that because like it makes sense.
Think about it. Think about it.
Those are the hardest fish in the world.
They had to take those Spaniards out somehow, so they cursed the redfish so they couldn't eat.
I saw this painting of like this artist rendition of them fishing.
Yeah.
And like in my mind, I'm thinking like reading this article like that they fish and they're hunter gatherers. So hunter gatherers, I would say. It's like they killed deer and didn't grow crops or whatever, but I'm still thinking of them like with like a cane pole or like a rod. They fish with like these. They created the fish trap, which was interesting to me. So I saw this painting of them just like corralling redfish. There was like some mullet mixed in, but there was like a ton of redfish. The guy drew it in there. And I'm like,
that's what I'm talking
funny.
about.
So
back to the corn though. Where did the corn come from?
I think the corn came from another tribe. They bartered it. Yeah.
What about this? Okay. So
GMOs.
they contacted something different.
You're freaking me out.
They got the corn from the skunk ape.
Oh, okay. I got one on the skunk ape.
Yeah. So think about this. So they contacted the skunk ape who was moving up north and south, meeting the skunk ape buddies, and he had some corn, and they traded with the skunk ape.
No, I can't. That
why not?
Because the skunk ape wants to eat people and kill people. We don't know that,
right?
Maybe Mitch Hedberg said that the reason that all of the pictures of Sasquatches are blurry is because the Sasquatch is blurry.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing.
And it's not the photographer's fault. The Sasquatch
He's got a cloaking
is blurry.
device. Yeah.
I have a theory on the skunk ape, Yeti, whatever you want to call it thing. If you think about these tribes back in those days when they were, we were doing what, white Europeans were doing, which was moving in and considering everything ours.
Pillaging,
Yeah, pillaging. We were doing that, exploring the new world. So these people start to go extinct. / even really before that, it's like, well, if this is a tribe of people, and there's only, let's say, a few hundred of them, at some point there's going to be inbreeding, right?
That's yeah. Unfortunately, that is a sad fact.
What is one of the sad facts about inbreeding?
You die.
Well, you die.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you get some mutations every once in a while.
Some weird stuff going on. Yeah.
What if there is a what if you get enough of that going on, and you've got these skunk ape type people, but they're just mutated inbred people? That's what you've got running around.
That's a good one. So
and maybe like there's a mutation where they've lived for a long time.
Yeah, they're immortal.
Or there's enough of them that they've created their own babies per se.
They live in the Everglades.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The Everglades, man. So, FWC officer, buddy of ours, who used to work down in the Everglades. Dude said he saw some crazy stuff.
I believe it for sure.
I mean, I don't think I fished 10,000 Islands. I fished Chokoloskee. I fished the Everglades before. You don't realize the scale and size of the Everglades. It's literally almost the entire lower section of Florida from like Marco Island.
Yeah, it's giant.
Across and down. Yeah. It is huge.
Yeah.
Like it is giant. Yeah. Absolutely. Let me Google that. How many acres is it? I think it's like...
I thought it was like 2 million.
I think it's like
acres,
2 million
I believe.
acres.
So something like that. So I mean, it's huge for sure, and it's a totally untouched area. I mean, you can't 1.5
million acres.
Close. Yeah.
Throughout Dade, Monroe, and Collier counties in Florida, and the southern tip of the Atlantic coastal plain. So it covers the Gulf and the Atlantic partway.
Yep. So what you're saying with all this is that you agree with me that the Tocobaga tribe got corn from the skunk apes, and that they were a possible genetic mutation that has lived forever.
It could be, because they supposedly went extinct in 1700. Very sad.
Yeah.
Everybody said they were a peaceful tribe.
Yeah.
And
heard they were tall, which is interesting.
Really?
Yeah, they were taller folk. Yeah.
I don't know, man. The world of conspiracies is pretty... Did you know that Brad Pitt and Obama are related?
That's true.
They're ninth cousins.
Yeah.
Did you know that the Bushes and the Obamas are... I say the Obamas. Barack was adopted. His real name's not Barack. It was Barry.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's somehow related, cousins-wise, to George W. Or like... No, I'm sorry. I think it's George H.W., and Barry's adopted father, who, by the way, was like a major in the Indonesian army.
I'm freaked out.
Got arrested for like genocide, like attempted genocide.
I'm freaked out.
I'm just saying, you want to get into the conspiracies. Next episode, I think we get deeper.
That's
into,
what this is all
the crazy
about. Is
government
talking
conspiracies.
about fishing and conspiracies.
Fishing and conspiracies.
Yeah, so
that's a crazy one.
That's what we're doing here. I like that.
I got to,
for sure.
but I got to do a lot more research on that stuff.
Yeah, no.
Before that, anything else?
No, I think we figured out, why the redfish in the upper Tampa Bay are hard to catch.
Because of the Tocobagas?
Because of the Tocobaga tribe.
Tocobaga, right?
Yeah,
Tocobaga.
Sure. Close, yeah. That's why they're hard to catch. And what can we do to release the curse? That's really what it is. I think it's fly fish. I think we have.
Is it a curse?
I mean, I think it's fading. I think we're learning how to catch them.
They had like good intentions about it.
Maybe to like protect them. I don't know. It either had to do with protecting them or like getting the Spaniards out of there. So it'd be kind of cool to have one of those metal Spaniard hats, like the conquistadors.
I read that it's so like the article that was talking about that they're like a peaceful people. It's like except for the time that they beat a missionary to death with a club.
Ah, yeah, that's
when he hopped out of the boat and they just beat the crap out of him until he died.
Yeah.
So poor guy.
Well, this was good. I think we learned a lot.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for coming and listening. We look forward to doing more of these and talking about conspiracies and fishing.
Yeah. So our goal is to do at least one a week, and I think that's a pretty good aim. So yeah, we're gonna get I think we like to take the deep dive into some of this stuff and just read all about it, regardless of whether we believe it or not. It's so entertaining to read about all of this stuff. So, but yeah, we pretty much have nothing to offer you except for entertainment. So that's about it.
Yeah. Next time at Fishing is a Simulation. See you.
See you later.